My name is Eli Martyr, and you're here in the secret classroom right now here at the FreeMelon Society, and I'm glad you're here. On this channel, we're seeking to restore to the human condition our rightful claim on health, beauty, and cleanliness, and all the other grand expressions of God's glory through our bodies and our lives. But in striving to more closely mirror the glory of God through our bodies and lives, a process of self-reformation is required. This self-reformation process sounds like a lot of work, much like the work that you'd be consigned to if you were renovating a home, for example. But to our satisfaction, taking the first steps of this self-reformation process need not be as toilsome or laborious as you might at first think. Because the first step in this self-reformation process starts with what I've liked to describe as coming home. So what exactly do I mean by coming home? By coming home, what I mean is submitting to and accepting the all-encompassing wisdom, truth, guidance, moral impulse, sensitivities, and other directions of conduct that you as a human being come equipped with by default, as a natural byproduct and an inheritance from God and nature. Coming home is accepting the ultimate authority of God's natural laws as a necessary foundation for all knowledge and being. Let me say that again. Coming home is to accept the ultimate authority of God's natural laws as a necessary foundation for all knowledge and all being. When man deludes himself into believing the autonomy of his own mind outside of a foundation in God and nature, his thinking will be vain and foolish. From the Bible, we read Colossians 2, verse 2 and 3, that their hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love, and unto all riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the acknowledgement of the mystery of God, and of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. If we read from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. That quote from Proverbs is often misinterpreted to understand that we should be fearful of God. And a critic would read a quote like that and say, oh, well, the Bible must be evil, suggesting a cruel God because it's saying that you should fear the Lord. But you have to read between the lines a little bit here. Proverbs is not suggesting that you fear God. What this is saying is that you should fear the consequences of not following God's laws. That's what it's saying. Because a truly wise individual knows absolutely that their mind is not autonomous over the laws of nature to which they cannot escape. And so through your knowledge and wisdom, you would recognize that the consequences for disobeying the laws of nature, the laws of God, are dire. This, of course, is the underlying meaning behind the superficial wording of the stories in the Bible. Now, diet and food is a subject that's frequented here on this channel. That's because diet and food is the most easily accessible avenue that we have to making the most important constitutional and foundational changes in our lives that will spark and set off newer improvements once the initial steps are taken. All deeper progress of the soul is contingent on the cleanliness of the temple. And it's for this reason that my diet had to change from the one I grew up with in order to more closely honor the laws of nature written indelibly in the body and in my mind. And for those new to the channel, what is that diet? That diet is made up of 3 categories of food. 3 categories of food fit for man to eat. The fruits, the herbs, and the nuts and the seeds. All those things are taken up easily by the human physiology in their completely natural, completely raw, and unadulterated state. You would align yourself with the laws of physiology and the laws of vitality, and in other words, you'd be obeying the principles of nature. Of those 3 categories of food, fruit will probably tend to make up the bigger majority of the amount of food that comes into the body, because it's to the fruits that our physiology responds with the greatest affinity and the greatest strength. Now, I talked about coming home. So how does a natural diet help us come home? What do we mean by that? Well, throughout the ancient world, the hierophants of the secret wisdom of nature, taught about the duality in man, a curious juxtaposition between two opposing forces, like in nature, but opposite in unfoldment and expression. We're talking about the juxtaposition between the higher man and the lower man. The higher man is the lofty spiritual guide, the sublime mind of God and nature exemplified in man's spirit. And the lower man is the instinctual, the non-thinking animal nature side of our being that seeks to ensure our base survival and lock us down to the earthly matters of life. Now, this upper and lower relationship is a creative formula used throughout the universe on all scales of existence. It doesn't matter how far back we go in human history, we will always find reference in allegorical or mythological form, whatever it is, to this duality, this juxtaposition between the opposing forces, the higher and the lower, expressed as a universal principle in our totality of being. No matter how far back we go, all ancient texts, all ancient literature, all are trying to teach the same thing through the stories that they tell. In Norse mythology, for example, you have the realm of the gods, okay? You have Asgard, the home of the gods where all the gods commune amongst each other about all the godly governmental things, okay? But then on the earthly plane, you have Midgard. And Midgard is where all of the humans, is the physical world. It is the earthly plane where the humans live out their lives. The humans and the animals and the plants and the rocks and the birds, etc., etc. Now, Asgard and Midgard are connected by the Bifrost, okay, which is this rainbow bridge that connects the higher, the world of God, to the lower, the realm of man. So what this myth is conveying in this rich symbolism is that the mind, the governorship, the seat of the soul, the commander of the vessel, is the authority that rules over the lower kingdom, ideally, and it's connected to that lower kingdom by the Bifrost, which in this case would represent the spinal column, okay? The serpent fire that reaches all the way up from the very depths of the sacrum all the way up into the mind. That's what this mythology is teaching. What about in ancient Egypt? The ancient Egyptians were no stranger at all to this dualistic principle found within man as well. What is the Sphinx? The Sphinx has the head of a man and the body of a lion. Man being the consciously evolved thinking individual, and then the lower half of the man, the lower portion, is the animal, is the beast, is the lion, right? The realm of God in the higher, the realm of the animal, the realm of earth, physicality on the bottom. There's that classic headpiece that you see when the Egyptians wanted to depict either a pharaoh or a highly enlightened individual. They would be wearing this headpiece with the snake, a serpent, coming out of the forehead. So what does that mean? What that means is they have taken that creative force locked into our lower selves, and they have, through an act of discipline and will, risen that through the spinal column, through the Bifrost, through the channel, up the spine, igniting all our energy centers, our chakras on the way up to the third eye, all right, to the mind, to the higher centers. And so that's what that means. The serpent coming out of the mind means that the serpent fire, the force of nature, has risen up from the animal center and is now being expressed in the mind. That's what that means. You'll find this dualistic principle enshrined in so much of Greek mythology. Let's take
Theseus,
for example, the story of
Theseus
and the Minotaur.
Theseus has a task.
We're not going to flesh out the whole story, but just for now, we'll say
Theseus has a task.
He has to go into the bowels of the earth, okay? He's got to go into the underworld. He's got to go into the labyrinth, this underground cavern, a dark, dank cavern. It's a maze. And he has to go into the labyrinth, and what does he have to do? He has to kill the Minotaur that resides in the bowels of the earth, in the heart of the labyrinth. Now, what is a Minotaur? The Minotaur is a beast, okay? The Minotaur is a half man, half beast. The upper portion of the Minotaur is like a human being. And the lower half of the Minotaur is like what? Is like a bull. It's a beast. Taurus, the zodiacal principle. It's the animal. But notice the Minotaur's body. Everything is man-like, is human-like, except for the head. The head is the head of a bull. So what this symbol of the Minotaur is saying is that the enemy, okay, the beast-like nature of man, when man has to go into the depths of himself, the lower aspect of himself, he finds the beast. But the reason the Minotaur is so dangerous is because he is the man at the top and a beast at the bottom. But the head is still beast-like. It is still the animal. It means that his head is being ruled by the lower beast self. What you would want is you would want the upper portion to be ruled by the higher centers, not the lower. And so they're trying to show you in symbolic form that this beast, this enemy to be conquered, is when life is ruled and dominated from the lower animal aspect, okay? So this Minotaur has placed the lower animal self on the head, okay? So it's still the bull on the head. And that's what makes this the monster that
Theseus
needs to overcome. Very interesting. Who hasn't heard of dragons? What is a dragon? You're all familiar with the story of the dragon deep in the cave, guarding the mountain of gold, and the white knight in shining armor needs to come and slay the dragon. What does that mean? Well, what is a dragon? A dragon represents earthliness. A dragon represents the forces of earthly nature. Because the dragon is a mixed symbol. It's a symbol of all of the elements of earthliness combined in one. So the dragon has scales. The scales of the dragon represent the fishiness of the dragon under the sea. Water, the water aspect. The dragon's skin is often portrayed as green and has 4 limbs and goes on land, which is the land principle. Earth. So you have earth and water. The dragon has wings, and it flies through the air like a bird. This is the air principle, okay? And of course, the fire's offensive weapon, the one that he uses to destroy and change the world around him, is the fire element. And so the dragon breathes fire. So you have the 4 elements as a symbol locked into one creature in mythology. And so what is the knight doing when he slays the dragon? He is slaying earthliness. He is slaying materiality. He is dominating the lower physical nature, the realm of earth and material. And when the knight does that, he has access now to the spiritual gold of the higher mind. That's what this is telling us. I'd like to read something for you. This is from Initiates of the Flame, a wonderful little manual written by a Manly P. Hall. It is said that King Solomon, when he completed his temple, offered bulls as a sacrifice to the Lord by burning them upon the temple altar. Those who believe in a harmless life wonder why so many references are made in the Bible to animal sacrifice. The student realizes that the animal sacrifices are those of the celestial zodiac, and that when the ram or the bull was offered upon the altar, it represented the qualities in man which come through Aries, the celestial ram, and Taurus, the bull in the zodiac. In other words, the initiate, passing through his tests and purification, is offering upon the altar of his own higher being the lower animal instincts and desires within himself. Very interesting, right? And you see, we're learning something very profound, because if you can understand the meaning behind this human concept we've had spanning throughout all of human history of sacrificing an animal on the altar, okay? You can now make sense of this mystery school teaching or theme of sacrificing an animal on the altar and not be misled by its literal interpretation. And you can see all throughout history now, it is the foolishness of man that is literally interpreting this symbolism as some sort of justification to actually physically sacrifice animals on an altar as if that were pleasing to God. So you can see that human beings have been getting that completely wrong, not only in ancient history, but today, because our attitude and disposition towards animals is directly tied to this misunderstanding that we've inherited from generations upon generations of ignorance. Sacrificing an animal on the altar would be interpreted by the initiate into the deeper wisdom of nature, into the mystery schools. They would understand that what this is saying is to not take an animal and literally kill it on an altar. What this is saying is you must sacrifice your own internal animal nature and place that on the temple and give that as a willful sacrifice that you make to your higher nature, okay? Which is pleasing to God, and you are gifted back in return the love and the glory of God, okay? That's what this is saying. This is a huge mystery that is very helpful to understand. I'd like to read another little excerpt from Mystic Masonry by J.D. Buck. The problem of genuine initiation, or training in occultism, consists in placing all the operations of the body under the dominion of the will, in freeing the ego from the dominion of the appetites, passions, and the whole lower nature. The idea is not to despise the body, but to purify it, not to destroy the appetites, but to elevate and control them absolutely. This mastery of the lower nature does not change the key of the physical nature as such, but subordinates it to that of a higher plane. Without this subordination, the clamorous lower animal nature drowns out all higher vibrations. The clamorous lower animal nature drowns out all higher vibrations. As if in an orchestra, the bass viols and the drums only could be heard, and noise, rather than harmony, would result. Hence the old saying, "He that conquers himself is greater than he who taketh a city." From such mastery of the lower nature by intelligent effort and willpower, there results not only peace, but the silencing of the clamorous lower nature, clearness of vision, and power of discernment. There results also a sense of freedom and of power and a certainty of knowledge. So from all this, we're seeing that the idea of conquering the lower nature, the lower bestial, instinctual animal self, and tempering its raw power with the higher light and wisdom and the purified will is the noble obligation for humanity. The secrets of inner mastery and victory over the lower self have been the common recurring theme that unifies all other themes in human thought, human philosophy, religion, myth, storytelling, and the like since the dawn of our species. Geez, our very concepts of heaven and hell come from this very, very same mystery. I'm sure many people have been caught musing, I wonder where this comes from. Where does this idea of heaven and hell come from? Steeped in our consciousness, steeped in our psyche. Well, if you were an initiate into adepthood, and you'd been properly trained in spiritual science and gotten to a place where the initiate has clairvoyant vision, okay, enough that they could see the human aura. If you were to regard the human body with clairvoyant vision, then what you would find is that individuals that are characterized more by earthliness, by the sensual indulgences and sensual pleasures, given to lustfulness, given to food indulgence, given to materialism, all the lower attributes in man. If that person were regarded by someone with clairvoyant vision, what they would see is that the color red like a red mist or a red fog, would dance around and interpenetrate the lower part of that individual, around the sacrum, the gonads, the lower center, okay? All that would have a red hue. This fact of spiritual science, portrayed through allegory and storytelling and myth as stories to be decoded by those in the know who know what those symbols mean, perpetuated over time, you can see how this redness of the lower world could very easily over time be construed as hell, being a fiery red environment. And of course, what is Satan portrayed as? What is the devil? He is a red-skinned being, or he's garbed in red. Satan is also, wouldn't you know it, half beast. He's a goat or a ram or a bull. It's an animal. Okay, he is the beast, just like the Minotaur. Satan is the unrestrained, uncontrolled lower aspect of man gone wild and trying to dominate the seat of governorship in the higher mind. The beast self is trying to supplant God from the higher mind. Okay, so Satan is horned. He is a beast up here and down here. Whereas the higher man would not be a beast up here. It would be a person, a human being up here and an animal on the bottom. So a controlled animal nature. So the beast, the lower self, the animal, throughout all time, using one label or another, there seems no place on earth intelligent man hasn't colonized, whose sacred texts had not focused in large part to the grandest of all mystery teachings. The highest obligation, the most righteous and noble battle, that timeless story whose profundity is etched into the stone of our destiny, the mastery of self, and conquering the beast lurking in the lower man. This is the challenge that all people must face, whether in this life or in the next, if the lesson isn't learned. The beast is not a villain, however. It is simply a force, a law. It is the instinctual and intelligent grounding force that instills base behavioral programs into the unrefined being to keep them alive. This lower nature is what rules the behavior of the animal kingdom and serves to distinguish man from the animal. I'm going to read to you another text by Manly P. Hall from the Occult Anatomy of Man. Now, this is a short segment from a larger work, so you'd have to read this to get the full context. But he's in the middle of talking about mediumship, and we're picking up just a small section of this. The reason mediumship through the solar plexus is a retrogression may be summed up as follows. The group spirits who control the destinies of the animal kingdoms govern, then charges through pictures thrown against the solar plexus. For the animal has no self... This is what's important, readers aside, okay? For the animal has no self-conscious mind. As a result, instead of thinking with its own brain, it thinks with the brain of the group spirit to whom it is attached by invisible magnetic cords. These cords convey their impressions and photograph them upon the sympathetic nervous system. Having no will of its own, the animal is incapable of combating these urges and consequently obeys them implicitly. Man governs himself through the cerebrospinal nervous system because he has developed individuality and the sympathetic system no longer rules him. So what we're seeing here is that the lower self locks the individual into base sensuality. The animal mind is dominated by this impulse that locks us into the lower as a default program of base survival requirements by the organism, if that makes sense. So no thinking involved, no conscious higher mind, nothing. It's just base instincts, and that is a program. It's like you're on autopilot. Like you walk your dog with a leash. You could think of the animal kingdom whereby Mother Nature is the owner, the animal owner, and is holding the animal kingdom with a leash, not letting it go off on its own yet, ruled by the nature spirit, by the instinctual lower self that keeps them alive, which is why animals seem to get along in perfect order and harmony and balance when mankind is nowhere in the picture. It's because they don't have the type of free will that human beings do, and so animals have no choice but to work in harmony with the group instinct. Humankind, though, has loosened the shackles, loosened the chains, gotten rid of the hold that Mother Nature has on their individuality by being gifted an ego, an intellectual ego. Our free-thinking, individualized ego is our greatest gift, and it is our greatest enemy. How we use the gift determines the quality of the individual. How we use that gift will create hell on earth for you, or it will create the kingdom of God exemplified through your being. The untempered, uncontrolled, undisciplined sensual indulgences will create a beast out of you, will create a Satan out of you, right? This is what the symbol means. So you carry your own personal hell with you, okay? Lower nature. And if you are dominated by these, then you will be in hell, right? The red skin of Satan, the red fiery inferno. This is just a symbol for the dynamics of the psyche. Or we use our higher mind to place the animal nature on the altar and sacrifice it to the higher mind, and thus gain the glory of God. What I'm teaching you here is the ultimate teaching of the sacred, timeless wisdom of nature. It is the common denominator that unifies all mystery teachings all throughout human existence. All advanced esoteric philosophical thought is steeped in this mystery of conquering the lower bestial self. Let me reiterate. What is the ultimate teaching of the mysteries? Know thyself. Master thyself by taming the animal force of the lower aspect. The aspect that lives in sensual indulgence, lust, greed, materialism, selfishness, and the like. We accomplish this mastery of self by taking the raw force of the lower nature, that sheer raw repository of power. We accomplish this mastery by taking that force and raising it up to the higher ennobled self, the true master. Now, why is taming the beast so difficult? Taming the beast is so difficult because the world around you, the adulterated world of vain philosophical thought, the world rife with mistruth and human folly, that world is designed to feed the beast. That's why this is so problematic. And it is why so few people actually do it, is because the world has poisoned your mind with all manner of influences that are designed to feed the beast and keep it in control of your mind and keep you away from anything like true higher spiritual evolution by tempting you with all things that feed the beast and starve the higher soul. The entire global food culture is based on a hijacking of the senses, of the sensuality, which makes extrication from the pull of the lower nature of sensual indulgence very challenging. Culture compounds this by promoting all manner of sexual perversions and pushing the boundaries to deeper and more perversion, more ugliness, more adulteration, throwing that in your face and saying normal. And so we get that messing up our minds too. Then we also have all these poison habits that ruin the body and ruin the mind. Drugs, alcohol, smoking, all this kind of stuff. In essence, what is culture teaching us? Culture is teaching you to be completely godless in mind. Godlessness, the thing that will destroy this planet. A lack of reverence for the higher laws of nature, and an arrogant contempt of a higher authority that we must answer to, or suffer the consequences. Choice is ours, right? So, this is why diet is so unbelievably important. This is why, if you're familiar with the teachings that I try to give here on the FreeMelon Society, you'll see a lot of it is diet related. And I do that because it is step one on the road of physical mastery. You can't achieve physical mastery without mastering your lower self. Not going to happen. Thousands of years of ancient texts have tried desperately to communicate this timeless bit of wisdom to humanity. That if you're looking at awakening to becoming a better human being, you will not do it without mastering the lower self. Period. End of story. This is more than just a diet. This is not just a diet. What a diet like this does and what it affords is it allows you to, what we talked about at the beginning of this, to come back home and removing the influences that drive the beast wild and make your development extremely difficult. I don't think that I've ever shared what I'd like to share with you now. So that's going to conclude the lesson portion of this. But I think before I go, I want to share some stuff with you. I don't think that I've ever shared what I'd like to share with you now. I've touched on it. I don't know if I've really gotten into it. Anyway, I'm gonna do it now in the hopes of letting you guys get to know me better, right? And know where I'm coming from. Just give you a little slice of my life. You may have every once in a while heard me make reference to the time of change, right? The period of reform, a period of time where I had already started on the path, cleaning out your body, cleaning out your mind, reading esoteric literature, getting into spiritual development, getting into inner reform of the mind, so on and so forth. And if I'm telling the story of Eli, I would have to include this very, very interesting period of my life that I guess I would call the period of inner reformation, where there was this grand set of changes that were happening in my subconscious or unconscious mind, the part of your mind that is tied to your higher self. And so as I was making these philosophical inquiries, philosophical changes, introspections, deep diving into my own likes, worries, fears, motivations, and trying to see them, right? Truly see them and ask questions and get answers. And in conjunction with that, I'm also cleaning up my diet, eating well, giving up poisonous, toxic habits, so on and so forth. The period of reform was a period of time in my earlier development, which was characterized by a series of deeply moving dreams that would recur very often for maybe a year or even slightly more. And over that period of time, I was being given experiences that felt unlike other dreams that I've had in all throughout my life that I can remember to this day. There was a depth and flavor of them that seemed to be a direct communication of a message of approval from the higher self, appreciating what was happening in my life. So what would happen in these dreams? About once a week, I would get a dream depicting some sort of richly dramatic battle or war against some sort of animal representation, some sort of beast, some sort of animal, some sort of lower creature. And there was this highly dramatized, richly romanticized and heroic types of battles. In 1 week, it would have been lions and those being conquered in some way. Next week, it would be a pack of wild dogs. The next week, it would be tigers. The next week, it would be some sort of other monster. In some dreams, it was not necessarily a war or conflict, but just encounters of some sort. The theme that unified all of them was a complete destruction or slaying of some lower aspect, taming of some lower aspect, or some befriending of a lower aspect. Sometimes the dream would be about some sort of snarling creature crawling through the grass and confronting me. But then a very eerie and mysterious calm comes over me. And even in the face of this snarling, growling creature, something tells me that this thing isn't a threat. And eventually it stops snarling and quietly sits and just enjoys the night sky with me. Some of these dream experiences went beyond, though. Some of them would last, quote unquote, days. There was an unforgettable, deep level experience that I will never forget. And it spanned in dream world the course of about 3 days. So what felt like 3 entire days that I can remember, where I was living in a castle, and the castle was preparing for an onslaught of some sort of demon army. And we spent 3 days preparing for this onslaught. Going to bed every night, I've got memories of this, of waking up in the morning, doing a type of routine in this castle. A castle composed of myself, many different friends, and other people that looked like Eli. Okay. Other aspects of myself. Once this battle got going and the enemy was on the horizon, the mass expanse of them was just indescribable. All my friends, family, cousins, all of the inhabitants of my castle, all in the war gear, waiting for this onslaught of things to come. Such an epic battle. Like I couldn't even describe this to you. And then in the days after, once we had slaughtered everybody and sent the rest scattered, the land healed. New growth appeared. New trees began to grow in the fields. The gardens became rich and bountiful. The kingdom decided to create a day of celebration to commemorate this grand victory. And when we were giving speeches, these representations of gods came down to our celebration, which was chilling. One of the gods came and didn't say anything to me, just approached me and just patted me on my shoulder, pulled out a massive spear, a massive triton, and went, stuffed it in the ground in front of me, making this huge noise that just reverberated throughout the whole land. And I looked up at it, at this gift that this god had given me, and then that's where the experience ended. Woke up just shaking, having lost 3 days as far as I was concerned in this dream world. One of those experiences, I spent an entire week. You're familiar with the Chronicles of Narnia, yeah? Where I think, is it that you spend many years in Narnia and that equates to only a small amount of time in the real world? Is that how it works? I'd have to double check. But anyway, I had one experience where I spent an entire week where every day was a different theme. And I returned home, remember going to bed and waking up in that very same room and then living out my life. In this life, for this week, the story that was being told was that I met a woman, and this woman was a master. And this woman was willing to take me as a student and teach me the mysteries of nature. So every day for a week, in the evening, once I was done doing my business in the day, I would go to this woman and she would give me a new teaching every single day. She was teaching me how to control the world around me with my mind, controlling objects like a telekinesis thing. We started with just pieces of dust on the table. Then we moved to coins and pencils. Gosh, I remember this. She would guide my hands. She would set my posture. She would encourage me. After class, I would go home and test, go to sleep, and then wake up the next day for the next lesson. Anyway, I was fully engaged in this life. What was interesting is that I remembered my life here on Earth, but as the days rolled on in the dream, I guess I just figured, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that was my old life, and here I am now, just doing this. Eventually, I got to the place where I was molding and moving stone. I could grab a big slab of rock and then I mold and move stone and shape it into different shapes and whatnot. So what is my higher self communicating here? It's communicating that I'm learning how to take control over the earthly part of myself, right? The physicalized aspect of myself. Now, when I woke up from that experience, I don't know if you've ever had a dream that you spent at least a week in. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. When I came back to wake up to this real world, to say that I was confused would be an understatement. It took me at least a day to reintegrate into this world because I was fully committed to my life in this dream world. And reconciling and just integrating what I had just experienced as if I had gone on vacation and spent a week doing stuff, that was deeply transformative. So, I'm giving you a slice of my life here. During this period of reform, there were also no how do I say this delicately? All expenditures of the organs of creation were surrendered during this period of reform. Surrendered and actually continued for several years. A practice which further helped completely dominate and control the beast. All of these experiences I was experiencing during what I'm calling in my life this period of reform, where these physical and mental changes are happening, and my mind seemed to be dramatizing this conflict, this mastering of the lower self, the mastering of the lower nature, mastering sensual desires and indulgences. And my higher self was dramatizing to me this war going on in my psyche where the evil was getting rooted out and the lower nature was getting mastered and conquered and tamed and controlled. It was beautiful. It was this confirmation that I'm doing something absolutely correct in my life. And my spiritual self took notice and said, Eli, good work. This is what's happening under the surface right now in your soul. This mastering of the beasts of the lower depths. Lots of these experiences were very memorable. Some of these experiences, however, were so utterly terrifying. So utterly terrifying. I'd almost wish it on no one that they ever run into the same beasts that I did. And to say that these encounters were memorable would be an understatement. And there it was. I was off, embarked down the road of inner reform with no turning back. Cleaning out my body never to be polluted again by the food that feeds the beast and not the man. Controlling the appetites of flesh and stomach. Showing the beast who the master of this house is. All sprung from the simple choice to change what goes into the temple. Challenging efficiency with memorable fasting, which further drove the beast into submission to my will. Doing the inner work with quietude and isolation. I gave up countless weekend nights out to study and learn, reading book after book, taking my notes and getting inspired. All of these profound changes that started to occur in my life sprung up with humility from something so utterly simple as truly making what went into my body only what its wisdom truly and honestly called for without input from the intellectual, fallible mind. So in conclusion, we learned that self-mastery is won when the beasts of the lower nature are controlled and conquered by the will of the higher mind. That lower nature, it's not evil, it's powerful, and it's been created by the intelligent force of nature to ensure the survival of the species. But the beast can be fooled. It can be easily tricked and spoiled by sensory indulgence. And it is this weakness that the entire human culture out there exploits to keep you from achieving the spiritual gold upon which the dragon rests. The beast isn't evil. It just needs to be shown who the true master is. Master thyself, my friends, and in doing so, you will not only master yourself, but you will master the influence that the world around you has on your mind. This video leaves a lot unsaid. It's not an instructional how-to, but more of a philosophical understanding that you can use and apply to your life in whatever way you like. No one is perfect. Don't be too hard on yourself. Allow yourself a gradual process of change or reform, spanning as much time as is needed. Life is good. We're meant to enjoy the pleasures of life. Our charge is simply to do it mindfully, though. The beast is always there with us, my friends. It's never going away. But do we have the resolve to show it who the master of the house is? That, my friends, is for you to decide. Okay? I love you very much, and God bless.